Welcome to the Kotak workshop. In today's video we've got a restoration and repair for a very special piece that has been inherited. It is a rotating bookcase from the Edwardian period, so after the Victorian period, but in a style reminiscent of furniture 200 years earlier. Quite a sentimental piece. This was something that the owner remembers her grandmother having, and she remembers it from the age of 2 or 3. And recently it was shipped to her and posted and was damaged in the post. And unfortunately she didn't keep the packaging or take photographs, so was unable to make an insurance claim. And so we were contacted and asked if we could help. I'm looking at it now. It's turned out very well. There were some challenges, particularly with wood warping and also a mixture of wood and metal together where the metal had broken. And I've had to use some quite extraordinary levels of technology beyond epoxy, which hopefully will extend the life of this piece. So enjoy the video and let's get on with the restoration. So this has just arrived in the workshop and is in a few pieces and has some damage as well. It's a unit that should be sitting one on top of the other and it should rotate. There's damage. This corner has been dropped. That's got to go back on there. This needs cleaned up. A few other bits and pieces. And then in here I've got some missing parts of the lattice work. And then the surface is in okay condition but has a few rings. So that's the restoration we want to do. This is the underside, and you can see that this board has flexed. This is broken here, where that repair needs to be done. Okay, now I want to take off this base. Give you an idea of how much it's warped. So I've taken the screws out and you can see that these two here were held tight and this one has now made such a large hole that the screw can't really go back into that, which is because of the bending force on it. So I'm going to have to put that back in. I could either fill this hole, but what I'm thinking is actually turning this around the other way and aligning it slightly differently so that I get a different piece of wood. But I just need to check where they align to, because I don't want it to be too close to the existing hole. So this one is nice and far away, but this looks just too close. So that idea is not going to work. The other options would be to offset it slightly, or to fill this hole and try again. But it would need to be something very strong. Other option would be to fill these and then drill another hole. That's probably the best thing to do. That's what I'm going to do. This is a slightly different clamp. I've protected the surface here and then pinch from both sides, and then that allows me to put some light pressure on this tiny little piece that's drying, that's gluing here. So it just allows you to pinch from the side. Notice also, I don't know if you can see there, that X. There is not an X on the other sides, and that matches up with an X on the underside. So I'm looking at this panel as the repair is drying, and I'm just thinking about this warp and this piece that goes on the underside. I'm trying to see if it's a solid piece of wood, but I think I can see this cathedral that comes up here, that says that large part is one solid piece of wood, and I think there's a seam or a line going up here, and this is an additional panel, so I think it's two. It could be a third, but I don't think so. I think it's two pieces of wood. So what's that, about 1/5 and 4/5 this panel, and you can see running up the edge here, just catch it in the light, there it is, that is the point, the valley of the bend, and on the other side you can see a crack forming here, and it runs up this way, which is that side of that cathedral on here. So what I'm worried about is if I force this flat again, it's going to fail and it's going to break up here. Maybe not now, but at some point. And if I screw this back in and flatten it down, I risk snapping it. Now, it's obviously settled in this shape. As we say, the wood has stabilized, and it doesn't want to be flat. So what I think I might do is actually sand or plane the same profile into the support and actually allow it to remain curved, in the hope of preventing this from cracking. So how do you cut the right profile shape from this? The first thing I'm going to try is one of these, which allows you to get a profile, and then I'll be able to transfer it with a pencil. We'll see if this works. So it's that sort of curve that I'm going to want. So I've transferred a line by doing it in sections, and that's the, maybe not quite that much material, but that's the shape that I need to carve out. So I took that line, put it on the bandsaw, and this is what we've got. I think that's pretty good, and that is going to be it's going to provide strength but not force it flat and crack it. I'm just going to give this a bit of a plane and tidy up, and we'll be good to go. So this repair has come out quite well. So there are some marks, damage to the surface finish, and because this is a solid piece of wood, I am going to be able to sand it and not worry about cutting through a veneer. So I'm going to give this a good sand and bring it back. So the base has turned out very nice, and I've given it just a very light stain. I didn't need very much, but I just wanted to match the legs. So because this hole was damaged, I've drilled another one and countersunk it, and then you can see that it now follows the curve around, and we're good. We need to glue this foot back into here, and I think we can get quite a neat edge, but I think we'll need quite a strong glue, so I'm just considering which glues to use, but we'll get that with a modern carpenter's glue, I think. This is cracked and damaged. What I want to do is see if we apply some clamping pressure, if we can actually get it to come back together. Okay. Somebody wants in. Right, I'm now going to use an air hose to blow some of the glue down into the joints. Just very gently. I don't want to blast glue all over the workshop. I want to get down into both of these joints. This corner piece is nailed at two ends but is loose in the middle, so I can tell it was glued because this bit is cracked here. So we'll get some glue down into those joints as well. So here's the glue up. You can see, because the glue is white at the moment, you can see the sort of moon shape there, but that'll dry clear. I'm going to clean a bit more of the glue up. So we clamp the foot, the side, and the other side. We'll leave that to dry. So here's the missing piece that I need to replace. So what I'm going to do is I put some tape down, and with a pencil I'm going to trace out a template for the opposite part. So while I'm working on this replacement bit, I've clamped two bits of wood on either side so that it's quite rigid now, whereas because it's also broken at that end, so if I was sawing on it or working on it, it might break even more. So I'm using these tiny veneer saws because they're flat edged and I can get right in, and they've got fine teeth, and that will allow me to clean it up. So I've tidied this side up, now do the same here. So I've got a piece of plywood here, which I'm going to cut from the template. Well, I'm using plywood because it's because it's layered, laminated, it's got strength in both dimensions. Whereas if I cut it out of pure wood, such a thin piece with the grain would snap, and also it is laminate that it's going onto. I'm just going to have to think about how to get the grain or use a veneer on top. So that's the piece that we want in that orientation. This is some mahogany veneer, and I want the grain going up and down. Okay, so I've now got the glue blocks back in place for the rotating base. I've got veneer on here, I've got veneer in there, and I've repaired this side here. So basically everything is gluing up and drying. So while it's still being clamped, I have done a little bit of sanding and put on a little bit of filler and some dark oak stain. And that was my replacement piece up there. And I'm probably going to put a little bit of wax into that gap there. So this is the repair that we put in. You can see around the back. I just need to tidy that up, but that's going to look a lot better. So that's the inside now, looking a lot better. And just tidy up some of these little corners. And remember, this is the inside. This is what it looks like on the other side. So this is snapped off. I could try and bore it out and find a replacement. But what I think I'm going to do is use a very high strength epoxy called JB Weld and try and just hold it in place. It doesn't have to be very load bearing, but I'm worried that it looks ugly rather than isn't strong enough. So we'll see what it looks like and if it'll hold. So this is the JB Weld. I'm just going to mix up a batch till it's mixed and it's a nice grey colour. Now this is what I was worried about. How much do I remove? If I take it all away, then there's nothing holding it in place. But if I leave it like that, it looks ugly. So I'm going to tidy it a little bit, and I will be able to colour it later. But I've got to get the balance right here between strength and what it looks like. Okay, so this is now dried and been sanded a bit, and our JB Weld that we used is completely solid, so that's holding this one in place here. It doesn't look too bad at the moment, still got to dye it up, but now I want to just stain up this leg where it's been sanded. Because it's the base, I'll probably go for something a little bit darker just to match this side here. That is pretty good, I think. Okay, I'm now at the point of putting this bottom piece back on, and I've screwed in the 3 corners, and we're left with this. Unfortunately, the JB Weld potentially wasn't strong enough, So I've got a piece of metal stuck in there and this fitting to go on. So I'm going to try something rather unusual for furniture repairs, and it's the strongest glue that I've got. So I'm going to screw this on and then attempt to bond it. Okay, we're now at the point where we want to repair this last piece here. The metal fitting has broken and snapped off, so it's stuck in there. So if I try and cut it out, I damage the leg. If I try and drill it out, I damage the leg. So I'm sort of stuck as what to do. And I got a lovely email this morning from Simon at Gilboys, who said, "That's a nice Edwardian bookcase. I've always liked the look of Edwardian furniture, as it copies the Regency period of 200 years earlier. Sadly though, in most cases, not the quality of workmanship of that period. Edwardian furniture was often mass-produced and the construction techniques used were frankly pretty awful. But that bookcase looks beautiful. I hope it all goes well with you. Give me a shout if you need anything." And I see what he means, because mixing metal and wood in this way, lots of restorers say causes problems. You see it when people try and put nails in where there shouldn't be, and also the bending that we've had to deal with. So there's clearly some design problems with this. So what I'm left with now as the restorer is what to do. So I'm going to have to use modern glues. We've tried a little bit of JB Weld. I found that that was a little bit brittle. There are really strong, the toughest wood repairs, 2-part wood fillers. That's not going to do it. So I'm going to use a mixture of 2-part epoxy, where I'm actually going to glue the wood to the wood. But for the metal to metal, I'm going to use something that you may not have seen in regular repairs. And it's actually from the dental industry. It's the strongest glue that I've got, and it's a product called Bondic. And it's a glue that comes in a very specialist tube, and you dispense from this end, and the other end is actually a UV light, and the glue is hardened by UV. So very specialist product. I've got a set here. It sets in seconds. It's the strongest thing I've got. The only other thing would be to try and weld it, and clearly we're not going to do that with that pin in situ. So that's what you're going to see me doing next, is 2-part epoxy on the wood and this Bondic product for the metal. And hopefully those two together will mean that this is strong enough to hold the papers and books that will go on it. So that's what I'm going to do next. So first thing I'm going to do is mix up the epoxy. This is a 2-part epoxy. Comes in a dispenser like 2 syringes in parallel. And before that dries, I then want to put some of this Bondic that comes out like at the end of a needle. So I put some on that end and some in the hole. On this end. Put in the screw. Now, with the epoxy, I've got sort of 5 minutes working time, and with the Bondic I've got pretty much as long as I've got until I shine the light on it, but there is natural light coming through the window, but probably less UV. Then I switch on the light, and that will start to bond the glue together, and then I build up another layer. And shine a light on it. Try not to dip the torch into the drying glue. And this apparently was developed in the dental industry. It's how some teeth are glued and bonded. And almost like 3D printing, you can build up layers. It's quite expensive, but it's the strongest I've got. Now obviously it's going to mean there's no movement, which is possibly a bad thing if things flex, especially if it's brittle. But we've got a combination of the epoxy and this. So let's hope that's strong enough, because I've got nothing stronger. So I'm preparing to put the two pieces together, and this cross piece goes in. There's some lovely dovetail joints there and there. But when I put it in, it wobbles. And so if I clamp it down hard this side, then this end is going to be up. And I'm not sure whether to plane that off or to try and straighten it, but just to show you how warped it is, if I put it down on a flat surface and then put two pieces of wood that I know are true and parallel, some people call them winding sticks, if I come down like this, you can clearly see that that end is in one plane and this is in the other. So the board is warped. It's another piece of wood in this piece of furniture that has warped over time. So what I need to do is at least have surfaces ready for gluing. So I've taken a chisel and just straightened off that edge. It's really strange taking a chisel to original carpenters or original cabinet makers work. You can still see the saw marks, but now that I've just taken that lip off and I put it back in here, you can see now that that's solid and that's solid, so I've now got surfaces we can glue on. Result. So I've now glued the cross piece in and the piece at the top, and then clamped on either side because I need to make sure this gap is even so that the tabletop is level. But there's still a lot of wobble in the design, but that's looking pretty good. So I've given this a light sanding and taken off the shellac layer, and then just bring it back. Now we turn our attention to the top. I'm going to give it a very light sanding by hand with 320, just to see if I can get some of these marks out before putting a finish on the top. I've got to be very careful though, because it is beautifully inlaid and it's going to be quite a thin veneer. So as I'm sanding, I can see some letters somebody's written either on a piece of paper and it's come through. Look at that, I can definitely see an E, T, S, A upside down, another A, just in that corner. Okay, this has now been very, very carefully sanded to 320. And let's have a look, see what it's going to come up like. Look at that golden edge, that's just beautiful. That is so, so nice. So as always, this is an indication of what it's going to look like when it's finished. Just beautiful, and all those watermarks and cup stains have all gone. I think that's going to be really nice. Okay, we're going to go for some of this lovely Osmo hard wax oil, which we're going to just put a decent amount. There we go. And then just rub this into the grain. Bring out just the beautiful colours. It's a really thin coat. This is the rapid version, so I should be able to get another coat on this afternoon. 2 coats or something like this should be enough, and then we'll wax it. It's just drinking it up though, but the colours are just spectacular. I really like this because it's very easy to apply, it's very forgiving. It also comes up with a brilliant finish. There's also food safe, toy safe, and 100% could you put hot cups of coffee on. I wouldn't recommend that, and I know the owners are going to take great care of it, but if somebody did put a glass of water or something on, it's much more durable and much less likely to get watermarks and stains than shellacs or some other varnishes. As a first coat, that is pretty good. Okay, this has now had 2 coats of the hard wax oil and I'm ready to put a wax finish on it. I'm going to be using Gilboy's Rose Gold because there's some lovely colouring in here, but it's not a very light wood, it's not a very dark wood, so this is recommended for rosewood, light mahogany. It's great stuff, I highly recommend it, and been delighted to say that I've been in conversation with Simon at Gilboy's, and we're going to be offering a special Kotak Workshop discount if you want to buy some of this. So it's great stuff. I'm going to apply it on here with some 4/0 wire wool, and let's see how this top comes off. So I charge my wool very generously, and then working with the grain, get a nice even layer in. The smell is very much beeswax and natural oils, very distinctive smell, makes the workshop smell lovely. I'm wearing gloves, not because I'm particularly worried about toxicity, but it's better that I don't have to keep washing my hands, and is quite dark waxy colour. So you can really see it feeding into all of the grain. So we'll leave this for about 20 minutes and then give it a buff. Okay, it's been about 20 minutes, so let's start buffing. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm starting to see the shine come up and starting to see what the finished piece is going to look like. It does take quite a bit of elbow grease, and it's quite satisfying as you polish, you start to see the shine coming up. So an Edwardian rotating book cabinet, just ready for some books. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. As have been requested, some of the products that we used, I used Osmo hard wax oil, which I've talked about in a number of videos. I used the Bondic product, which I've not used in a video before. And I used Gilboys Rose Gold in this case. And as I mentioned, Gilboys have very kindly offered Kotak Workshop viewers a discount. If you enter Kotak 15, I'll put all of this in the description below, but if you enter Kotak 15, if you order some Gilboys, you'll get a 15% discount, courtesy of watching Kotak Workshop. I'm not paid for this, this is not a paid endorsement. However, they have kindly said that once I've finished these latest 1 litre tins that I ordered, they would refill them for free. So wonderful company, really great customer service. It's a great product and it was a big part of this build. And I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time. There we have it.